episode 48. It's actually 4 years, which is a big milestone today. I just realized that. Uh, we started 2019. Most of the meetings are recorded and uploaded to YouTube, but not all of them. I actually started recording when pandemic hit, so only when around maybe May 2020. Um, so not everything, but most of it is in recording and uploaded. So we have a special guest today, Amir Kirsh. Not the first time. Fortunately, we had him a few times. So thank you again, Amir, for um, coming in and presenting. Today would be C++ incidental exploration. I'll let you introduce that. I'm just gonna just introduce you. So just a few notes from our sponsors, Qualcomm. Thank you, Qualcomm, for sponsoring the meetup and paying the meetup fee, especially Charles, my VP, that supporting this uh, initiative, and thank you, Charles, for doing that. We have a Dropbox where I place all the content. We have Discord, Slack channel. Discord is more active. SDCPP Meetup. This is the YouTube channel. We also have a Twitter handle. I also have my own Twitter handle that you can follow. Uh, Voltboard.blog, which is Martin's blog for all kinds of C++ related topics. Very interesting uh, blog to follow. And let's introduce Amir, our guest today. So Amir Kirsh is a lecturer in Academic College of Tel-Aviv-Yaffo and a visiting lecturer at Stony Brook University. He, as well as the developer advocate at Incredibuild. It's a product that we actually use and we really love. Thank you. Amir also serves as one of the organizer of the CoreCpp meetup group and CoreCpp conference in Tel Aviv, as well as a member of the Israeli ISO C++ national body. Welcome, Amir. Welcome to our meetup.
Thank you.
I'll stop sharing and it's all yours.
So I will press the proper button to share, and let's find the proper window. Too many windows open. I will find it. How come it is lost? In a moment, we'll see it. I think that I know. I had it open and then I opened the meetup page. So let's see. Okay, now I see it. Okay, so this is the thing that I want. Let's check it again. Okay, I think that you see my screen now.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
let's
We can
open.
see.
Okay,
It.
so
Yeah.
please feel free to ask questions during the session. It's very associative, like an associative container. I mean, ask anything. I will start with what is the purpose of this talk. I'm going to explore a few C++ domains, topics based on a journey through C++ Q&A in Stack Overflow mainly. And I came into it because I love to answer questions in Stack Overflow occasionally and to read questions in Stack Overflow. And I feel that I learn a lot from that. I learn a lot from reading questions and answers, and I learn a lot also by answering. And this brought me to this journey. So I was already introduced, but I still have to go through the very shortly through our marketing slides for Incredibuild. You are using Incredibuild. Maybe we have other guests not from Qualcomm, or maybe some division or team in Qualcomm which do not use Incredibuild, we do build acceleration, or in a more generic way, CI pipeline acceleration, because it's not only for the build, it's also for static code analysis, testing, maybe also distributed to idle machines. And the idea is to distribute the workload to idle machines either on-prem or using the cloud. There are many happy customers. I will not go through all of them, but I'm not sure that we have Qualcomm here. Do you see Qualcomm? Maybe I should add it. And I think that now we are ready to discuss the talk of today, a journey through C++ QA discussions. But I do urge you that if you have questions regarding Incredibuild, or you are not using Incredibuild and you want to know more, don't hesitate and reach me, and I will be happy to discuss that. So why I love Stack Overflow? Because I learn a lot from that. And I want to start with something that I learned by answering a question. So I had a Chrono private tutorial with Howard Inant. For those of you maybe who do not know, Howard Inant is the man behind Chrono. He is also the man behind StudMove, the man behind the idea of move semantics. And he's a very nice guy. If you ask a question in Stack Overflow on Chrono or on move semantics, and if your question is not a duplicate, if it is duplicate, then quite quickly somebody would mark it as a duplicate and point to the old question that already was answered. But if it is not, then most probably, or with high chances, the person who would answer the question would be Howard Inant. And getting an answer on move semantics from the person that invented move semantics or on Chrono is quite nice. Anyhow, there was a question in Stack Overflow about Chrono, and I felt that maybe I can answer that because I said, okay, I want to practice Chrono. I think that I know how to answer that. And this time, our Inant was not quick enough. Now, I don't know if you are aware about how Stack Overflow works, but when you see a question and you want to answer it, and the reason for answering questions is some like that because they learn from answering. There are people who like to see their reputation goes up. There are many reasons. Anyhow, when you have the answer or you want to invest in answering, somebody else can be working on the same question at the same time, simultaneously. And in a way, you want to say, oh, I own it, or I come with an answer. And if the answer is good, then the others would not bother giving an additional answer because you already answered. So usually you do not start with a very long answer that would be complete and then post it, because by then might be that somebody else already posted maybe the same exact answer. So the first thing that you do is to come up with a short, concise answer that helps the original poster, OP, we call the original poster, but maybe is not complete. So the question was about using the modulo operator with Chrono, and you cannot use it like that. You need to use it a bit differently. So I came up with an answer saying, okay, this is the way that you need to do that. And the answer included a link to actual code showing how this request can be performed. And a few seconds maybe later, I got a comment from another user saying this answer would be better if you explained why. And I wanted to say, come on, you know that I was quick just in order to come up with an answer. Give me a break, or give me 2 more minutes. I will come up with something. So I was planning anyhow to elaborate the answer. I agree. This is not a full answer. This is just a snippet of code. I mean, I started with something in English. You are looking for something like. By the way, posting only code is considered bad practice in Stack Overflow. So yeah, I'm explaining this is what you are looking for. But yeah, I wanted to add something more. But then Howard Inant came into the page. Howard Inant posted a comment on the question itself, asking, what is the first error you get? I get the error about the equality operator. about the equal operator. Now having our inant on the page, my comment back to this asteroid with wings was, well, I would try, but having now our inant on the page makes me a bit cold feet. At least if I'm wrong, I'll have someone to watch over. And then I tried. I added the explanation of what I'm adding for, why this is the proposed solution. And I got from Awardin on this comment, you're doing fine, but can you rewrite it without using count? And I want to talk about that because from this discussion, I want the count understanding to be the focus. In my code, if I go back, I use count on the return value from the calculation being done here. And the reason that I use count here is when you do anything with chrono time duration, the duration comes with measurement units. Because chrono is a very smart library. It works with type safety. It has type safety inherently inside the library by any calculation eventually comes up with a measurement unit. But I wanted to check equality to 0. And I cannot check equality to 0 when the return value is not an integer, it's not a number, it's seconds. And there isn't any conversion from seconds to an int. So I call the count function. And the count function actually returns the number. So 5 seconds count is 5. 5 minutes count is also 5 because it's, can you please give me the number, drop the measurement units? And for that, I felt that this is fine because I want to compare it with 0. Then our inant came back or came and said, well, count is not so good. And he's right. He's right because when you use count, you actually enter into your code bare numbers without measurement units. Now, in this case, it was for equality. It was for equality with 0. But at the same time, it might be that, okay, now I'm sending like distance, and the other side cannot know whether it is meters or feet. And maybe a satellite would crash over Mars. This actually happened. So you should be very careful with calling count. Maybe try to avoid that. Maybe work with the measurement units. And the fix is quite easy. Instead of comparing that with 0, I can compare it with 0 seconds because I know it is in seconds. So I came up with, yeah, I should do that. And I changed that to, by the way, it is more elegant. The code seems nicer. And I was happy with that. And I got the comment from Awadinan, much better. That was my upvote, by the way. And he added, now you just need to clean up your explanation a little, which I did. And that was the private tutorial with our tenant getting both the thing that I knew, but I mean, we tend in some cases to be not so careful. And after getting this private tutorial from our tenant, I think that I will be more careful now, not only with Chrono, but with any type that uses type safety. Stick with the measurement units. Don't try to use the bare numbers. And this is why I love Stack Overflow, because you get private tutorial with our inant. If you have any question on this number 1 item, please let me know. Otherwise, I will go to other questions that I'm going back to occasionally. Instead of questions, if one of you can just let me know that you can hear me and you're following and everything is fine.
Yeah, Amir, is all good. I must say that I had something similar just happened today, so it's kind of a coincidence. So I'm happy to see that.
You mean you met with our tenant somehow?
No, no, not that one. Chrono duration and some mathematical expression that needed to happen using count, not using count. So this was it's actually a very interesting coincidence. So yeah, thanks for that.
Great. If you go, by the way, I will share the slides later on. If you go to the actual question, you will see in the answer that eventually the answer answered technically to what the original poster, the OP, asked for. But then both Awad and I, in later comments, agreed that it actually doesn't really work well. So the question asks for something, and we say, okay, you can do it like that, but it will not solve what we're trying to achieve. And then I added, after discussing in the comments with our, I will explain. If you want to achieve something once in 5 seconds, using Modulo will not be good because Modulo just tries to stop immediately on the 5 seconds. And suppose that 5 seconds and 1 nanosecond elapsed, the modulo would return something which is not 0. So it is quite easy to achieve the thing that the OP wanted, but eventually the answer was not using modulo. So it started with, okay, you need to do it like that. Then, okay, but I will not use count. Then it continued with, oh, and by the way, this is not the way to achieve that. And again, this is something that you learn or you get into while reading questions, but I would say more strongly when you answer questions. Questions I'm getting back to occasionally. So in Stack Overflow, there are many questions that I'm using when I want to recall something. I remember something, but I forgot the details. So let's go into this a bit. Can using auto improve performance? Well, I'm getting to that occasionally when I'm asked by students, oh, so auto is nice, it's syntactic sugar, but does it have actual any advantages? And I'm saying, yeah, it does have advantages. For example, it may improve performance. And this is the example. What's wrong with this code? I'm looping over a map. I'm trying to get each pair by reference and do things with a pair. What's wrong here?
Yeah, that's the classic. I was about to bring this example because k is not k, it's const k.
Yeah, so when you iterate over the map, the pairs that come out are const key and value. So if you do that with const auto, you will not get redundant copies, while here you will get redundant copies. I tend to think that maybe I used the same example in one of my previous talks here in this meetup group. Anyhow, this is an example that comes in a question in Stack Overflow. And I tend to go back to this question with, yeah, there is a performance issue when you forget the const on the key. The problem is that you forgot the const on the key. So I can tell you, okay, don't forget the const on the key. But a better approach would be, why not just use auto? And when students usually see that, they agree that, okay, I now see that auto has advantages beyond just being more easy to use. So this is the link to can the use of auto improve performance? Well, not if you use the correct type initially, but maybe you didn't. Another one that I go back to is overload resolution for reference types. So the question was, how can I know which function would be called when I send L value reference, R value reference, etc., const? And this is the code. For example, I have 4 foo examples, 4 foo functions. By the way, the 4th one is not so useful and rarely used. And we will discuss that later on because there is another Stack Overflow questions about that. But the question is, okay, if I have all 4, or maybe the first 3, which one would be called with different types of objects being sent or different type of references? And there is a very nice table in Stack Overflow that I like, which shows that if an L value is being sent, then the first preference is to go to the L value. But it is also valid to go to the const L value. If you have both, the first will be preferred because you are not const. If you are a const L value, you have only one option to go to the const L value. You cannot go to an R value because you are an L value. If you're an R value, then the first option, the first preference would be R value, and you can go to the constar value, which is quite rare. Usually you do not have this row. A fallback would be number 2. So if, for example, you do not have a move constructor, then yeah, the fallback is the copy constructor, which is the same signature in a way as line number 2. And this is the link. I can go there quite quickly. Let's go there. You should see it now. So this is the table here in Stack Overflow. Okay, the question was here. And usually I go back to there because I actually took the table from here and I use it, and I feel quite well taking the table from Stack Overflow first because you can take things from Stack Overflow, and the second reason is that I was the person answering this question with the table. So anyhow, it is a useful table, I would say. And occasionally I just look for that. There is also the question of do our value to references, to const references, have any usage, like number 4, and we'll discuss that later. Another question that I go back to is implementing your own iterator class. So if you know, in order to implement an iterator class, you need to first have the prefix, postfix, implement also the reference, implement what else? Equality. And you need also type traits. You need the iterator type traits, otherwise you will not be treated as iterator. You can be used in range base 4. In range base 4, even if you do not have type traits for iterator, it is fine, but you cannot be used in algorithms, because many algorithms need to know the type of the iterator. Are you forward iterator? Are you bidirectional? Are you random access? And using this information, the algorithm can be optimized. I mean, at compile time, it will use the proper approach. So in order to implement an iterator, let's assume that I have a container that I wrote and I want to implement the iterator with this container. How should I implement it? How should I implement the iterator traits? Now, there is a base class called std iterator, std iterator. Std iterator is a base class for iterators in order to assist you in a way implementing the type traits. But in C++17, it was deprecated. It was deprecated mainly for the reason that some people saw std iterator as being the base class for iterator for polymorphism, which is not the case. Any iterator is not required by any mean to inherit from std iterator. So if you assume, oh, I can assume that you are an iterator, so I can get you as a std iterator using polymorphism, that is wrong. Std iterator was just a utility. But people still were a bit confused. So C++17 decided, let's just deprecate that. And then the question is, okay, so if I cannot take the std iterator type traits from the base, how can I implement that? And there is a nice example in Stack Overflow, and I get back to that occasionally when I want to implement an iterator. And the example there is using range, like range in Python in a way, a range between from and to. And inside, there is the type trait for this iterator, including also the other stuff that is not in this slide. There is a link here, and I see that answer also as quite useful. There are some basic questions in Stack Overflow that get beautiful answers, and I want to go through a few of those. So the first one is the following. You may take a look at the question and say, this is a dumb question. I don't want to insult any question. This is a novice question, maybe. The question is, if I have a function, let's call it foo, that creates a local variable and returns the address of this local variable, by the way, most compilers would issue a warning, but it is not an error. The compiler doesn't have to see that you are returning a pointer to a local variable, to a stack variable that is unwound. So it does compile. Most compilers would give you a warning, but let's assume that I didn't get a warning. And the question in Stack Overflow was the code compiles and it prints 58. Why 58? The first is 5, then I change to 8, and then I see 8 here. I see. Is it legal to use unwound stack address? Was the question. So I don't know what was what were the expectations, but I would say you shouldn't have any expectations because this is
This is
you
a
can help.
UB. This is a
This
UB.
is undefined behavior, exactly. This is undefined behavior, and the question didn't say the words undefined behavior. So okay, mostly answers to such questions would be just this is undefined behavior, and that's it. In many cases, the question would be just closed.
Why
But
doesn't
this
the
one,
memory?
yeah.
Why doesn't the memory consumed by cout always override it?
So in this case, let's take a look at what happens. I call foo, I get back the address of this A, and I print 5. And then the question is where the 5 comes from. Well, the 5 stayed in memory somewhere. I mean, in stack, the stack was unwound, but nothing else was written on top of that. It was not overwritten. So yeah, I got the 5. Then I override somewhere in the stack with 8. And a question might be, maybe it would crash. Well, it depends. I mean, some operating systems may, or some analyzers, or it might be that the stack would be protected in a way. And if I write above the stack top, I would crash. It might not. You cannot assume a crash, but this is undefined behavior anyhow. And by the way, when I ran it, I got 5.5 because it depends. It depends, by the way, on your optimization flags also, because with optimization, the compiler may say, okay, I see here P, so let's just, let's assume that this is 8. But if you ask for no optimization, then, or if you even say that something here is volatile. Anyhow, let's assume that we do not have any optimization. It might be that the compiler will issue code that actually goes in order to read, and then might be that it will see something else. Anyhow, it depends on the way that the compiler will treat this undefined behavior. And by the way, the compiler can do anything. I think that I saw something quite strange. It was in Twitter, I think. Undefined behavior that in some function, something was undefined behavior in a way that the compiler decided to skip that, and he skipped it, including the curly brackets closing the function, continuing to something quite weird. It was very weird, and it compiled. I mean, the code was fine for compilation. There was some undefined behavior, but the result of the undefined behavior was so strange. But the compiler can do anything when some undefined behavior is being introduced. Anyhow, this was the question. The nice thing here is with the answer. And the answer is, but by the way, before we go to the answer, let's play with it a bit. I mean, let's do that shortly. So I open here Compiler Explorer, and in Compiler Explorer, you can see that I have here few things. I have here Clang Tidy. So in Clang Tidy does say that I have issues. On the other end, and I do have warnings also. So I would tell you, okay, check your warnings. Use Clang Tidy to see issues. Okay, I think that we have an issue here. Address of stack memory associated with something here. You can see it here. But then the question is, would it crash? Well, it did crash here with GCC. It didn't with Clang here. I got 88. Can I get 5.8? Oh, by the way, how could you get 8 here? This is strange. How could you get 8 here? Because the compiler did some optimization. The compiler said, okay, this is undefined behavior. So let's just assume it is 8 always. Let's assume that you cannot read from So I got 88. Or maybe oh, maybe this was reordered. Maybe this was reordered. Anyhow, this is undefined behavior. Anything can happen. Now, if I will change the optimization, let's put it minus 0, maybe it will change. Oh, I'm running with address sanitizer. The address sanitizer didn't see the issue when I add the optimization. Why? Because after the code was optimized in runtime, nothing was awakening the sanitizer. But with 0, now the sanitizer sees the problem. Let's remove the sanitizer. Let's say, okay, now let's have it without any sanitizer. Okay.
It's actually interesting. I didn't realize that optimization would change the sanitizer behavior. Good to know that.
It didn't change the sanitizer. It changed the code.
The code, yeah.
And
but
then the code didn't, trigger the sanitizer.
Yeah. So
but
the
I
code
did
didn't
have
have it. Yeah.
Now I get the 5.8. Now let's go back to minus 0.3. It will be 8.8 as before. So you see that it relates both to the optimizing, to the compiler, etc.
If you declare A as static, is that considered undefined?
No, then it would be fine. If A is static, then it is like a global variable. It is not maybe so nice to return a static variable. You can do that. You can do that. Then it is defined. The thing that you see here on the 5 and 8 is from Clang Tidy saying that you are using magic numbers. Why do you use 5 and not a const expression, something that is declared something somewhere else? This comes. You see the mark indication on the 5 and 8. This comes from here is a magic number because I'm with Clang Tidy here. Anyhow, you can play with it. It's in the slides. But what I wanted to talk about is the beautiful answer. So I'm pressing here. You will see in Stack Overflow. By the way, this question brought the one that asked it to a very he has very high reputation because if you have votes on your question, and the question is quite novice, you get votes, you get reputation, which is nice. Okay, and why do you get so many votes? Because of the answer in this case, because the answer is so neat. I'll show you the answer. The answer got this vote score. I will not go through the entire answer, but the answer goes like that. I will close it. You can go and see it, but I will give it shortly. Suppose that you are staying in a hotel, and you checked out. And after checking out, you just recall that you forgot a book in the drawer near your bed. But then you realize, oh, I forgot also to return the key. So let's just go back to the room and take the book. I mean, who will know? And let's assume that the key may still operate. I mean, I may go to the room and the key may not work because it was disabled. It was invalidated. But let's assume that, the front desk didn't disable the key yet. Maybe I checked out at 8 a.m. and they disabled the key by 11. And maybe someone else did get the room. But I don't know, my key still works. So I'm at the door. I'm opening the room, okay? I'm getting to the drawer. I'm opening the drawer. Would I see the book there? And the answer is you may, but maybe you will see a book. You will continue to read from page 50, and you will say it is strange. Well, wait, it is not the book that I left there. It is another book. Yeah, it may happen. It may happen that you will step into the room and you will fall 10 stories down because they are renovating the hotel. Many things can happen. Okay, maybe you are thinking about other things that can happen. So the answer is great. I love it, and many other people love that, and this is why it got so many votes. There was a forgotten sibling in Stack Overflow, and I want to show you this for the forgotten sibling. This is the link to another one. This is a forgotten sibling that got 4. It is very, very similar. It's quite similar, okay? In fact, one can say it's the exact same question. And it was merged to the other one. I mean, this unlucky person got only 4, where the other one got, I don't remember, 1,000 or something. The maybe more unfortunate thing is that this question was asked before. So somehow this question was asked on May 19th, 2010, and the other one that we just saw was on February. No, this is edited. How do you see it? You can go in and see that it was later. Anyhow, these things may happen. Usually the answer goes to, but somebody answered this one first, or this one with a better answer. So this was the story about a beautiful answer for, is it okay to use unwound address? No, it is not. What will happen? It is undefined behavior, and the great hotel, forgetting a book in my hotel drawer after checking out. Read that. I mean, it's worth the reading. Let's go to another I-score questions and answers. So there is a very known, I mean, I think that this is the one with the highest score in Stack Overflow. Why is processing a sorted array faster than processing an unsorted array? And you take into account the sorting. I'm taking an array, sorting it, and taking into account in the benchmark the sorting time. And it is still cheaper than doing the operation on the unsorted array. And the reason is code locality. If the operation that you are doing on the array depends on the actual value, then it might be that when you sort it, you first do the same operation A on many items, and then you do the operation B on all the rest. While when you do it without sorting, you do A, B, B, A, and then you lose code locality, code cache locality. So it is a very nice question. Why do you see the railroad here? Because it talks about trains. It says that let's assume that the train needs to select the right rail. And let's assume that there isn't any, automatic thing. Let's assume that it works with flags. Somebody needs to flag the train, but the train cannot catch it on time. So in some cases, it doesn't see the flag, so it continues to the wrong rail, and then it needs to go back. And using this train example, you can actually understand code cache and why having the prediction, the right prediction, branch prediction is very important. So it is related to branch prediction and code caching. I will not go through the question and the answer, but I do encourage you to go there. By the way, let's click just that you will see. This is the votes for this question. I think something quite similar for the answer. The question itself is quite good by itself. So go there. The link is in. By the way, the question is tagged for both, for many, for C++, Java, JavaScript, etc., because the OP, the person who asked that, tried the thing with more than one software language. And he realized that, well, it is happening in many languages. Another one that has a very high vote. What is this C++ operator? While x goes to 0, print x. Do you know what? Did you know this C++ operator? X goes to 0.
So we had it in the we have this CPP quiz. So we had it last month. I don't know if people remember the answer. I'm not gonna mention that. So maybe people remember that or not. But we had it in CPP quiz. But
Okay.
I don't know if people remember that because it is tricky.
Anybody wants to suggest how this operator is being implemented? What is going on here?
Anyone remember from last month? Previous from Feb?
Yeah, change the spacing.
Yeah, change the spacing means that put the minus minus near more adjacent to the x, and you'll see that it is x minus minus. Anyhow, yeah, thank you. Anyhow, this is the question. Look how many votes it got. And I don't know if the question was sincere or somebody wants, to juggle, but there is a very nice answer, which also, got its votes, and it is quite high in Stack Overflow. Let's go back and discuss addressing unfavorable questions. So this is something that I like to do. In many cases, there is a question which, it might even get down votes. But I look at the question and I say, you know what? It's a valid question. Maybe it's a no-waste question. Maybe it comes from another environment. The person asking is not coming from C++, but I think it is a valid question. And I tend to answer unfavorable questions in many cases. Why? In some cases, I do see value in the question. So let's see a few. Can a class include a member of its own type? Maybe you can answer that. Can a class in C++ include, have a data member of its own type? Let's assume I have a class A. Can I have inside A member of type A? So this is the reputation that it got, -2. And by the way, it is -2 because I upvoted. It was -3. And it was closed. But it was closed only after I answered, because once a question is closed, you cannot answer it anymore. But I was on time to answer that. And then it was closed later. I don't know why it is closed. It was closed like, maybe it says here, this question needs details or clarity. No, I don't think so. I understood the question. And the question came from, I think, yeah, it says, the question came from somebody who comes from Java. In Java, this is legit. This is valid. Why? Because in Java, an object is a reference to the object. An object variable is a reference to the object. And in C++, an object variable is the actual object, is a value type. So in C++, no, you cannot do that. But then the question is, okay, so what is the alternative? There should be some discussion here. So I did answer that. I started with, changing the Java syntax to the C++. Instead of this dot, it should be this arrow. Instead of public private on each member separately, it should be public private with colon. Remember not to forget the semicolon at the end of the class because you are in C++. And then I came to the last thing. The last thing is you actually need a pointer. And then I discussed the possible options. And the possible options include a pointer, maybe a unique pointer, maybe a shell pointer, maybe a weak pointer. And when I started answering that, I realized that this is even more deep than the original poster probably meant to. Because understanding for your design, if you want to hold your own type, whether you need a row pointer, a unique, a shared, maybe a weak, depends on design needs. And then I discussed the different needs in the answer. So I think that something valuable came into that. And I would tell you that when I started answering that, I didn't have the design thinking in my initial answer. I was, okay, I would just explain that in C++, you do not hold the actual value, you should hold pointer. But then the design thoughts came in. And then something else went in. I thought maybe in C++ you can do something which is quite like in Java. Maybe you can hold a reference to A. So maybe in A, I can propose, you see that I propose a pointer, a unique pointer, a shared pointer. And my question to you is, can A in C++ hold a reference to A? What do you say?
I don't know.
Let's try to think, if you can, what does it mean? If you cannot, What is
So
the
reference.
reason that you cannot?
So reference is the pointer inside, right?
Reference is a pointer that must be initialized when born. So it is like a const pointer. You cannot change the pointer. You must point to something, and the pointer cannot change. You can change the content of that. You can call non-const function, but the pointee, you cannot point to something else with this reference. And you must initialize that when it is born. Now,
Yeah.
when the object
So
is born, my internal reference must be known. So
yeah.
I must initialize that. And the question is, okay, so with what can I initialize it?
Can we
Like
initialize it to ourselves?
Oh, okay, so I can initialize it with another A. But then the question is, okay, and who can be the first A? Because the first A, being born, should initialize its own internal A ref. With who? With whom? I don't have any other A. You are the first being born, and I cannot initialize you with null PTR. I must initialize you with some A. And the answer is yes. I can still initialize you with yourself. So it can be done as long as the first A being born will be initialized with itself, and then any other A can be initialized with an existing A or with itself if you want. So yeah, it can be done.
but how
Uh,
do you do that? How do you initialize like in the constructor?
yeah, I will show you, and
Okay.
we have another Stack Overflow question on that. So it will. This is something that will pop up again later on. Storing dynamically created objects. So there was a question again with low votes. I mean, it is unfavorable for some reason. I upvoted, it was -3. And the question is, should I work with pointers in vector or with concrete objects? I mean, this is a valid question. And now I can understand if somebody would be closing that, not downvoting, closing maybe for being a duplicate. Why? Because similar questions were asked in Stack Overflow in the past. On the other hand, I think that it might be that the answer is a bit changed over the different C++ versions. So my answer was, first, I pointed to a few other Stack Overflow questions and answers in the same domain, on the same subject. But I felt that a summary is needed. So I added my short summary. And in my short summary, I said, okay, if you are in C++ 11 or later, work with values, not with pointers. Why? Because if the reason that you need pointers is for efficiency, you can get the same efficiency with values in C++ if you are working correctly with move semantics. For example, if you have proper move constructor, or you are in rule of zero, etc. So I explain why working sin C+11 with concrete object in container is better. And then it is not in this slide, but it continues in the same answer. I discuss something that is quite fashionable these days, value types. So when you go to polymorphism, we're used to, okay, polymorphism requires pointers. So not necessarily. You can design things with polymorphism, hiding the fact that you are using polymorphism. So in a way, hiding the fact that you need pointers. And eventually letting the user work actually with concrete value types. And why value types are better? Because value types will preserve value semantics, which is another thing that should be discussed. And the answer points to the proper CPPCon, C++ Now talks. If you need to learn more about value semantics, I urge you to do that. And this answer points to this topic. And value semantics is important. It is important because as much as you preserve value semantics in your code, you have code which is less bug prone. So I felt that, when I started, it was like, okay, I will just point to a few answers. And then I wanted to summarize that. And while summarizing that, I came to a few notions that I want to emphasize. And this is why I believe answering questions, you learn from that. You maybe emphasize for yourself things that you want or you need to recall. Answering my own questions. I mean, the questions that you saw before were questions answered, asked by others, but it is quite common technique in Stack Overflow. If you worked on something and you are proud about it, or you want just to make sure that you can get back to it. So you want to document the thing, and one of the ways to document things is to ask a question and answer it in Stack Overflow. I mean, oh, I found how to do that. Okay, so I will ask the question how to do that, and then I answer, okay, do it like that. At the same time, I will also contribute to others who may, may face the same issue or the same need. So here are a few examples. Using concepts for function overloading resolution. When I started to play with concepts, C+20, I wanted to see how I use concepts instead of Sphinai. And I just add that, and I said, okay, I want to document it. How to implement stud reverse iterator, how stud reverse iterator is being implemented. I want to discuss this question, how stud reverse iterator is being implemented. And this is a question that I discussed with students. And I wanted to explain the idea behind reverse iterator. And then I said, okay, I want to document the idea that I'm discussing, then I added this question and answer. And the question is that in reverse iterator, when you take an iterator to a vector, let's assume, and then you adapt it with reverse iterator. So you get the reverse iterator for the vector, which allows you to run back from the end to the beginning. What would be the end? If the end is one after the begin, one after the end, which is one before the begin, it means that the end iterator for reverse iterator is actually one before begin, which is invalid. You cannot point in memory before a given block. It doesn't, I mean, it is undefined behavior. The specification says so. I mean, most probably it will work, but it is still undefined behavior. You can point. When I say you can point, it means you are not going to actually use the value pointed because it is not yours, but just holding the address of one past the end is valid. Holding any invalid address is undefined behavior. You cannot just take an address and say, okay, let's assume I have this address. Mainly because of trying to go to address 0, maybe, or to negative address. So anyhow, getting one before begin is invalid. So how it is implemented, and the answer is the end on reverse iterator is actually the begin. But then the question is, oh, but the begin is an actual element. So the difference is when you do a dereference on a reverse iterator, inside the implementation of reverse iterator, the dereference do not get the actual element, but gets the one before. So when you are on end, it actually points to the begin. But if you will use dereference, it will try, don't do that. It will try to fetch the one before. If you are one before, so one before end will actually hold one after begin, but dereferencing will fetch you the begin. So it is doable and still being in the defined behavior arena. If you want to discuss that more, you can. And it is a legitimate technique, by the way, of answering your own questions also by others. This link points to Howard Inant answering his own questions, so I'm not alone there.
So I have a question for that on that one.
Yes.
So on a regular iterator, so you have a regular iterator, you hold the end, and you're not dereferencing end, but you have the pointer.
I can check equality, for example.
You can check equality. Why the reverse iterator didn't use that? Because again, I'm using something one. Oh, you're saying
it cannot point to one before the begin. When you use reverse iterator at the end of a reverse iterator should be logically one before the begin. And I mean, reverse iterator is an adapter. It doesn't create a new container. The container is the original container, and it actually uses the original iterator of the original container. It just adapts that. So when you do plus plus on a reverse iterator, it actually does minus minus on the underlying iterator that points to the underlying container.
Yeah, the question is like why it's valid for a regular iterator to point beyond the last element. Because
Yes.
it's not your
Only
memory. It's
beyond
not
the
your
last element because the specification says so. The specifications say, I take vector as an example because in vector it is actually actual addresses. Because if we are talking about, let's assume, linked list, so in linked list you do not point to a position in memory. Probably you point to a dummy tail. But let's assume we are talking about the vector. So end is an actual address, and it is an address that I do not own. And
right.
the specification says that you can do things with pointers that you do not own only if something in the program owns this pointer. So you know the pointer is yours somewhere. Okay, so actually you own it, or it is one past the end. Only these. You cannot deal with a pointer which is not one of these. It is
Got
undefined
it.
behavior.
Okay. Okay.
The reason, by the way, might be optimization. Might be that when the compiler will see that you are trying to do something with the pointer that is you do not own, the compiler can assume, okay, let's assume that this is 0. And it is not. It is an actual address. So you cannot do anything, even equality, with such an address.
Okay.
Kobe, I'm just checking. We have 90 minutes, right? So I'm not concluding now, just to check.
Yeah. Go ahead. Go for
Okay.
it.
Thank you. So this was about answering my own questions. Another comment or question?
I have a question.
Yeah, please.
So how what would be one way you could implement an iterator for a doubly linked list in which you are at some point there you return, say if you call end on that linked list, you have a pointer to the tail, or yeah, an iterator that points to the tail, and then but logically if it's you're calling end, it would be one past that, right? How would then
No. So if you have a dummy tail, let's assume that you have a dummy tail, which is not an actual tail. Okay. Usually this is the way, or I mean, quite easy way to implement a doubly linked list with dummy head and dummy tail, which do not represent an actual element. So the number of nodes in the list would be 2 more than the actual elements.
Okay. So then that would make it such that when you say call minus minus on the tail, it doesn't actually try to call minus minus on null pointer.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that was basically my question.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And if it is a vector, then it works eventually on pointers, because in a vector underlying the iterator is addresses, as opposed to what you need in linked list. So you can go there, and I think maybe I actually show the code that does this trick. So the trick is oh, this is the question, and the trick is here saying when you actually do the deref, then you actually return the deref of the prev. This is the trick. So let's go back and let's discuss answering a glimpse into what. Oh, I wanted also to show you how I found the questions that I answered. I mean, when preparing this talk, I wanted to explore things in Stack Overflow. So Stack Overflow has a very nice search bar, but in some cases you want to search with actual SQL. So Stack Exchange has a data explorer, and I want to present you the data explorer and how I used it during the preparation of this talk. So this is a Stack Exchange data explorer for. Oh, this is the link to the Stack Exchange data explorer. It is data.stackexchange.com. And inside, you can either browse questions, SQLs that people wrote already, or you can create your own. So, for example, questions with at least one answer by original poster. I mean, I want to find questions that are answered by the original person who posted the question. And I want to use myself as the user ID. By the way, this is my user ID in Stack Overflow. You can see it when you see my answer. The Stack Overflow, it is not a private information. Stack Overflow exposes this ID. So I ran this SQL. I mean, you can see this is this is public. Once you see that, you can say, okay, I want to run it with user ID, with my own user ID. Okay, so when I ran this query, asking, can you please bring me all posts in a join with the answer with the same person has at least one answer, and I got, oh, I need a captcha. I'm not currently logged in for that. Run query, and I have a few questions that I answered. So this is mine, but I can run it all on other user IDs. And I wanted to show you that because first, it is useful. Second, we can play with that for other usages. So for example, we can use the same SQL query API or environment, for example, to look for Stack Overflow post with the highest score. Let's take a look at that. So I have a query already prepared, and I want to see all the queries, all the highest questions and answers in Stack Overflow. It actually runs now on the entire database. Usually it has caching, but since I didn't run that recently, it has to run again.
Is this how you find new ones?
No, I find a new one by registering to a trigger. So I get an email once a day. You can have a trigger once on each question on a specific tag. So I'm triggered on specific tags. But you can also go into Stack Overflow. When you go into Stack Overflow, and suppose that you have some time, you can say, okay, I want to look at, do you see here that I put the tag C++ in rectangle brackets? So it means that I'm looking for, this is the search bar, the regular search bar. And I see the recent C++ questions. So this is one that has only one, has already one answer, but the answer is not checked as accepted yet. So I may want to answer that. But if I see that there are no answers, I say, okay, maybe I want to answer, or maybe I want to answer because the answer is not accepted. I see this one is not answered yet. I mean, if we will be very spontaneous, we can say, let's go there and answer that. But it requires some, I think, knowledge of Discourse and some library, MATLAB. It requires some MATLAB knowledge. Anybody here with MATLAB knowledge? Then we can answer that together. By the way, the question was asked 20 minutes ago. So you can see that questions asked 70 minutes ago, 17, 20 minutes, in some cases 3 minutes ago, 7 minutes ago. This one was asked 7 minutes ago. It already has 2 answers. Why? Because it is quite a vivid community, quite a vivid environment. People see questions. When I'm bored, I just say, let's see what's new. Let's see if we have an interesting question. So the query is more for more sophisticated queries. And the query that I just ran was the most voted answers and questions. So this is the sorted array one. Do you remember that we talked about that? This is the highest. But there are other. How do I undo the most recent local commits in Git? This is quite useful. And others.
Why does the first and the third look the same? Or is it
because one is the question and the other is the answer. I think this is the answer and the other is the question. And the reason is that I ask for both. Ask for the most voted questions and answers. So this is why you have both. And by the way, you have both these, which are also the same. One is the answer, the other one is the question. You can answer, or you can ask also, and what is unknown? Where there are a few posts in Stack Overflow which do not have a title, usually in the meta. So I think that this comes from something without a title. We can click on that and see. So you see that you have here an answer, but without a title. And this is because this specific question is a very different question. The question is voting for moderators. So moderator election is being done using the same QA environment, the same QA thing. And then the answers are like, okay, I want to nominate or to suggest myself, those who here suggest themselves. And this is why you got here this unknown. So let's go back to, we saw that we can look for the SO post with the highest score. I want to see the highest C++ scores, specifically for C++. Okay, so let's click on that. So we have the proper query saying, but I want the tag to include C++. This is the tag for C++. And then if I add that, we will see the most the highest votes for C++ questions and answers. I mean, the minus, the go to 0 will be there. But maybe we'll see other interesting questions. In some cases, it is interesting or unique, or I don't know. Doesn't mean that it has a lot of value. So the minus is very high. The sorted array is also there because it is also for C++. There is a question of the definitive C++ book guide and list. I think that the question is closed, but before it was closed, it had some answers and other nice questions. You can go there. You can, I mean, you have the link to the query, so you can run the query by clicking the link and seeing the, oh, let's see what are the most control. There is the lowest negative C++ scores. I will not click on that, but there are questions with minus 30 maybe. I mean, people are quite in some ways mean. I mean, this is a question why you are so aggressive. Anyhow, there are questions with minus whatever. Don't be afraid. You can ask, and if you get minus, don't. It's okay. Anyhow, most controversial C++. What makes something controversial? If it has many up votes, but at the same time many down votes. So I can show you that. So this is the query. I will run it. By the way, it is a fork that I made. I'm the John Doe here for in the data stack exchange, and I forked some existing queries and played with them. So let's see controversial C++ questions. I can explain in the meantime that I'm looking for things that add a very high up and very high down votes. So in a way, there is some helper table inside. I didn't invent this query. I took it and I just adapted that. It's a long one because if it is not cached, because it needs to query the entire data set, I think. And an indexing of the database wouldn't help here much, probably. You can ask questions in the meantime. Or you can think about controversial questions in C++.
How do you get by? I mean, I know you love Stack Overflow, but it has a lot of noise. How do you get past the noise?
So in a way, the environment itself deals quite well with the noise, because the reputation system helps you to see whether an answer or a question is good. So you get to that. I mean, you can see that something is not too reliable, and then you should think about it. If you see that the votes are very high, you can rely on that more. This is how usually you deal with. And in some cases, you actually see you know that the persons in C++ answering questions, you can know the names at a certain point. You say, oh, I know him. I mean, I know him maybe personally, or maybe, yeah, he followed other answers that he already posted. So why 10 XOR 1 is not 11? Oh, is 11. Sorry, is 11. Maybe the poster thought it will be 10, like 10 to the power of 1, because it is not to the power of. Now, many people upvoted, but many people downvoted. And I think the reason many people downvoted is because people who saw that the question got high vote rate didn't like it. They say, no, it's not a good question. And now this what happened there. But there are other questions here that were a bit controversial. Which operator is faster? I don't know. It's a good question. Not all thought that. So you can go there and see. I was a bit curious about answers that I posted when I prepared this talk with negative score. And I do have, I think, at least one. Let's do it quickly. Oh, either it is cached or oh, this is, I think, maybe the question is with negative score. Okay, it is answers on questions with negative score. Sorry, I think that I have also answers with negative score. And I keep them. I mean, you can delete something after if you don't like it. But I think that I have one answer that got a negative score, and I still like the answer. So these are questions with negative score. And the answers that I still gave them, even after I saw that, yeah, they got negative, but I still like the question before. Maybe it was closed or maybe it was not closed. And I have accepted answers with 0 score. It may happen. It may happen because in order to accept an answer, you have to have a certain level of reputation. And it might be that somebody liked your, sorry, in order to vote up, maybe somebody accepted the answer, but it doesn't have enough reputation to vote it up. So it may happen. So, oh, another very interesting our own quick TIOB index. Let's check which tag gets the most post count. I mean, you can guess which SO tag will get the most post. It will not be C++, I guess. You know, I guess TIOB index. TIOB index tries to get the popularity of software languages. C++ is number 3 I think now, or number 2, quite high. It regained some popularity lately. Anyhow, let's have our own SO. Can you you know, guess? JavaScript, you should say. Yeah, you should say JavaScript. JavaScript will be quite high. So JavaScript is first. Yeah, Python second. You can see that C++ is somewhere there. Something is very strange. For me, it looks very strange. jQuery. How come jQuery, which is a subset of web development, JavaScript, came so high? I don't know, but it came high for some reason. And now, this is our own TIOB index in a way. C++ is quite high, but PHP is higher. It doesn't mean that PHP is more useful in the industry. It just means that in StackOverflow, there are more posts that are on PHP or tagged with PHP. Anyhow, C++ is quite high. Okay, we talked about Stack Exchange data, and I want to go back to Stack Exchange C++ questions. So do our value references to const have any usage? I think that we talked about that. This was the 4th row in the overloading table. I mean, in order to get an R value and use it, usually we want to implement a function specifically for an R value in order to move from the R value. Because if you do not move from the R value, why it is important for you to distinguish between the R value and the L value? Now, if you want to move from the R value, you cannot have it as const. Because when you move for an R value, actually the R value is being invalidated. I mean, let's assume it is a string. Then string itself, when you move it, it is not the std move does that. Std move just, you know, casts to R value. But then when it is being passed to equality, to assignment, or being passed to the constructor, then it goes to the proper overload, which is the move constructor or the move assignment. And there, the original one being sent is being invalidated. Otherwise, it will be released. When, I mean, the whole idea of move is I want to take your resource. Can you give me the resource? Yeah, I can give you. Okay, so I just want to make sure that you will not release it. Can I put null PTR in your resource? Yeah, put null PTR. But in order to put null PTR in your resource, it cannot be const. This is why all the functions that get R value get it as non-const. I don't have much to do with const R value. And then the question is, so can you have any reference function with const R value with some valid usage? And there is a question on that in Stack Overflow. This is about the 4th row here. And of course, the one that answered that is our didn't, of course. But our didn't came with an answer saying, okay, there is a reason for that, maybe for equals delete. Maybe because you want to say this function doesn't work for our values. Okay, that's an answer. But I had in mind a better answer. I had in mind an answer saying, okay, you know what? You may want const R value reference in order to say something. Because in addition to saying I want to move from that, maybe you want to say, okay, I can deal with R values. So there is something about the semantics of I can work with R values. So I added my answer to that, which has a bit less votes than what our didn't got. But my answer was that I have a use case that actually the language didn't take, didn't decide to take, but it is a valid use case. And the valid use case is, let's assume that make unique, sorry, let's assume that unique PTR would not be able to be initialized from an L value pointer, only from an R value pointer. Why? Because I don't want to have an L value pointer which is still alive and being managed by a unique PTR or a shared PTR. And if it is an R value pointer, it means that the pointer is there, but it is a pointer that nobody else actually owns. And the compiler can follow that. So this is an example of something that can use if the pointer wants to be const. I don't have any problem with that. I just want to make sure that the pointer passed to me is an R value pointer and not an L value pointer. So I gave this answer as, yeah, I think that in some cases, and this is an example, you may have a similar thing in your own code. I want the semantics of saying I allow this operation, but only for R values. So this was my answer on that. Other R value and span important curiosities. So I have a curiosity. Maybe you can answer that. Why unique PTR release is not defined as no discard? Let me explain this issue. When you call unique PTR release does not free the pointer. It releases back the pointer to the caller. So when you have a unique PTR and you say to the unique PTR, okay, can you give me the pointer? I will handle that. Thank you for what you did so far. Don't free it, just release it. The word release is quite confusing because somebody can call release thinking that release actually free the internal pointer. Now, the way to manage that can be to add the no discard attribute. This no discard is added, I think, in C++ 17, and if it is added to the signature of a function, it means that if you call the function, you must take back the returned value. And if the compiler sees that you do not take back the returned value into a variable, it would be either a warning or an error. So the question is, and C++ 20 added no discard to many library functions, to many stud functions, but it didn't add it to unique PTR release. And then I was a bit, confused, or why. I was curious why it didn't add that, and I asked the question in Stack Overflow, and I got an interesting answer. And the answer is, they thought about that in the ISO committee, and then when raised, they thought about adding no discard to unique PTR release, and then one company that is represented in the ISO said, okay, we checked our code, and we saw that in some cases, 3% in their code, they said, we call release and we do not come to take the pointer. And we checked and this is okay because the pointer is held somewhere else. I mean, I would say that this is smelly code, but they said, okay, we do that. The company is Google. And they decided, okay, we will not add no discard because it will break existing code. Even though I think that the existing code is in a way misuse, is doing something that is maybe even bug prone. Another question that I had is why does the dereference operator for R value unique PTR returns an L value? I mean, suppose that you have a unique PTR returned from a function, and the unique PTR is returned, and you get it as an R value. You don't have a name, it is just returned by value, which means that you actually have a unique PTR as an R value. You know that if you dereference it, you can take the pointer and pass the pointer to an L value, which means that you actually have a pointer which is dangling, a dangling pointer. And then the question is why unique PTR dereference didn't distinguish between if I'm an R value or an L value. And the answer is they didn't want to. The answer, I don't like the answer. The answer is no, we just didn't. But anyhow, I asked the question because I was a bit curious. You could do that. Yeah, we could, but we didn't. Some language lawyer questions. A language lawyer question is a question that what would actually happen if I do something maybe a bit corner case? What the spec says about that? And usually you will find some language lawyer there that would go to the spec and read it for you. Because, you know, going in some cases, even going to CPP reference is a bit of a work, and CPP reference is not so easy in the complicated cases. So I will not go through all of them. I have here a few, but maybe let's take one. This is interesting. Is it undefined behavior or illegal when I use a name that is both already declared outside of a class and later declared inside the class? I mean, when I saw this question, I was you know, a bit surprised. Can you actually do that? Yeah, and yes, you can. It compiles. And then the question is, okay, it compiles. Is it undefined behavior, or maybe the compiler is wrong? It's a it's a corner case. You would probably not have this in your code. Take a look at this question. It is a very interesting question. I mean, it shows how C++ is not go through that. But I do want to talk about, is circumventing a class constructor legal or undefined behavior? You know what? No, I will skip this one as well. This one is interesting. You know what? You know why? I will not go through that because it is interesting because the answer for that was different between C++ 20 and after, before 20 and after, and from 20. Before C++ 20, no. Let me correct what I just said. Before C++ 20, taking raw memory and then casting the raw memory to an object type was illegal, even if the object is trivially copyable, even if the object is class that holds a single int. You couldn't create raw memory and then cast it to the class type of the class that holds just an int. It was undefined behavior. But people do that. And then in C++ 20, as part of C++ 20, they changed the rule and they did that as a DR, as a defect report, changing the behavior back to C++ 11, or maybe, sorry, back to C++ 98. So they said, no, it was always defined and correct. Now there is a question. If you have a DR that goes back to previous versions, it may change the behavior of your program. So in this case, actually, it shouldn't, because once it was undefined behavior before, you shouldn't do that. And once you say, okay, now it is defined behavior, okay, so I just gave it a defined behavior. Anyhow, something that was a bit problematic and had a lot of discussion was solved, and these questions talk about that. But I think that the one that I will take is passing a simple object into its own constructor legal? And do you know why I'm taking this one? I'm taking this one because we, in a way, discussed that already. When did we discuss that? When we talked about the A that holds its own reference. And the way to initialize the first A is by itself. But I still want to be able to send the A that you want to hold. And in the case that you want you to hold yourself, I want to send in the constructor, okay, I want you to hold yourself. Let's go to this question. So the question is asking, can I have in foo a constructor that gets foo, and then I want to create foo with itself? Here is foo created. Here is foo being passed to its own creation. Is it valid? And the answer is, it is valid. As long as you are using the value in the constructor only in order to take its pointer or reference, but you are not trying to get values from the argument. If you're trying to get values from the argument, it would become undefined behavior, because the values of foo, or calling any function that tries to access any value, any data member, this is illegal. But if you just want to take the pointer or reference, it is legal, which then makes the example of, oh, I want to hold my own type as something legal. You are mostly welcome to upvote this one, because this is a new answer that I just added as part of preparation for this talk. And the answer is, you know, I like the question and I like the answer, but there isn't any example. So let's add an example. So I added an answer with an example saying, oh yeah, it is legal, but let's take an example. And the example is, let's assume that you have employee. And inside employee, you have a pointer to the employee. Okay, so is this my answer? Is this, yeah, this is the one. Now I want to create employee, and in the constructor of employee, I'm assuming to get my manager as a reference. Now, there is a problem, because eventually the first employee to be created cannot have a manager. He's the first, he's the manager. So I can pass myself. I can say, okay, so I'm the manager of myself. And this is an example of, yeah, you can take yourself. And it relates to, and then you can actually have, instead of this one, unless I did want it to be a pointer, because manager can be replaced, I can have another manager. But let's assume you don't want to replace the reference, then it can be a reference. You can have a reference to yourself. So I added this answer. And this is a language lawyer question, because once you think about that, you say, well, the only way I can answer it is by reading the actual specification. And then instead of reading the actual specification, in some cases you say, so let's just ask a question in Stack Overflow and tag it with C++ and with language lawyer. By the way, there is a tag for language lawyer. Let's see if it was tagged with language lawyer. Yeah, it is tagged with language lawyer. Which brings, I mean, there are people who are triggered for language lawyer, so they get an email, oh, a language lawyer is being asked for C++. And then they rush in to answer this question, because this is their hobby. So we will continue. We don't have much more answers that became C++ conference talk. So I have a few answers, these two, which later on became a talk in a conference. After answering the question, I said, okay, it is an interesting answer. So you can take a look at the answer and then take a look at the actually YouTube talk. My last SO answer, waiting for your votes, is this one. There was a question about polymorphism. It is an interesting question. I mean, I'm stealing your time. I'm beyond the 90 minutes, but I will not take more than additional 10 minutes, I think, maybe less. So it is interesting, this one. Let's assume that I have a base class, and I have sub1 and sub2. I want a vector of sub1, and in another place, a vector of sub2. Can I have a function that can accommodate both vector sub1 or vector sub2? I want something with polymorphism, saying, okay, this function should get a vector of either sub1 or sub2. So the OP, the original poster, the one who asked the question, tried vector of base reference, which sounds reasonable in a way. Would it work? What do you say?
So regardless the fact that it's missing the virtual distractor.
Yeah, yeah. Let's assume that you had. I think that I had in my answer. I should have added the virtual distractor. This is not my question. This is a question that I answered. Let's assume that you have the virtual distractor.
And you're assuming no templates, or is that?
The question is, would that work? I mean, if I want to send into this function the vector sub1 or vector sub2, would this work? And the answer is no, not. It would not work, because the fact that you added the ref here just says that you are expecting a vector of reference to base, which is neither, not this one, neither the other. So no, it would not work. And then the question is, so how can I make it work? And the answer is, it is not so easy. I don't know if you tried that or if you add the need for something like that, but it is not so easy. Well, the thing is that you need templates. And then you can ask, okay, I want a vector of t. Yeah, vector of t can accommodate both, but vector of t can accommodate also others. And I want only these. So you need to spina. You need, in a way, to disable all others and allow only in your function those. And I have the answer showing that. And I show it with concepts. Let's take a short look. I don't know, a short look. This is the question. Maybe I do have, no, I'm still with 0. This is my answer. And in the answer, I'm saying, okay, you should have a vector of t. And then you can use template with concepts. Let's take a look. I say here, instead of type name or class, you know that I can say, I allow you to be any t that is conforming to this requirement. This is valid. So I say the t must be derived from base. Yeah, this is the way to do that. And then I can take only vectors of base, which is a vector of t, but t can be any one who derives from base. By the way, including base itself, because I think that derived from includes base itself, if I remember that correctly. And I have the example in code. And I also say, but if you are not in C+20, so unluckily for you, you'll have to use the full Sphena way with enable if on is base off with a dummy template argument, but you can achieve the same. I like this answer. Oh, and I have a vote up. Thank you. It is one of you.
Coincidence.
Okay. So thank you. So I will have to change that to saying, okay, it is still waiting for votes. Answering questions 8 years after asked. Is it possible to detect namespace membership in C++? So this question is quite old, okay? And I came into it a lot of time after it was asked. And then I came with an answer and saying, yeah, it is doable with a lot of macros. And I think that the answer is 2020, 8 years after it was being asked, and it was accepted. I mean, the person was waiting anxiously for an answer without accepting anything else. And I just, stumbled into this question. And for some reason, I was also dealing with, okay, can I do that? And yeah, you know what? Let's answer the question, even though it was asked 8 years ago. And the thing is that while answering the question on can I, have a Sphena or have detect a namespace membership, I get into topics like ADL, argument dependent lookup, and many interesting stuff. So it makes you learn. I mean, I cannot answer such a question without, while answering, exploring, which is a good thing. And I'm trying to encourage you to ask and to answer. Using SO community as a memory extension. So I recall that I know something about a very nice library that allows you to create things with, it looks very strange, but you can create a triangle, a rectangle, and ask for the area. And you see this thing? This is a valid C++. And I recalled that there is something like that, but I didn't recall what is the library. So I asked the question. It was closed, saying that it is, why? Because it is irrelevant. Anyhow, before it was closed, I got an answer, which was very nice because I was looking for this library. So in a way, a Stack Overflow is an extension to your memory. You recall something, but you cannot find it? Asking Stack Overflow. Can ChatGPT do better than human QA? This is the last part. And it will be quite quick because the answer is not yet, but it will be able to. So I asked Stack Overflow, ChatGPT. I want to get the notion of how good ChatGPT is with C++. And ChatGPT, I say that ChatGPT is a game changer. We will not be the same in a few years as programmers. Okay, things are going to change.
Have you used GPT-4?
You ask it questions for can you write me things in C++, or
No, have you
what?
used the latest model, the one that came out last week?
Oh, you mean the 4 version? Not yet. It should
Have
be
you
better, I
also
guess.
Have you also noticed that the structure of Stack Overflow itself would allow you to fine tune a model by having the model essentially supervise learn on the higher rated answers and higher rated questions? So it would receive those as repeats of the tokens more often. Like say you might scale by the number of votes and by some logarithmic algorithm. So you might do, the highest voted one you might get repeated 10 times and the lowest rated one might get repeated just once. And so that way it's more probable to output the higher quality tokens.
Yeah, and you mean that? Did you read that this is something that they do
I
in
know
the?
they did that for Reddit. That is a way to improve data quality. I'm just noticing that you could do that. The other thing is I know for a fact they have not done a fine tune. What a fine tune is where you use reinforcement learning to make a model substantially better at a subdomain task. So like for example, it does very poor at lead code. And the beautiful thing about lead code data is it's very, very, very trainable because you know every time you attempt a problem whether or not it's right because the website tells you. So
Mhm.
if you can do a fine tune, you could have the model repeatedly load lead code. I mean, thousands of times in parallel, attempt every single problem with high thermal, it would have high temperature, so it's very probable to be creative and try different approaches. And eventually it's going to, hammer its way to an answer, and then it would reinforcement learn positively on the tokens that resulted in a leak code answer for that particular question. And that would theoretically make it generally better. The other thing is you could do data augmentation, where the beautiful thing about lead code again is that every question gets tested for correctness. And so you could then do things like feed it a question where you give it the code and you say, translate this code to another language, and then you test it against the lead code unit test to see if it passed. And then you could also take, if you can get leak code to give their data, they could give a failed submission, and then you ask the model to review this failed submission, find what's wrong with it, and make it pass this original prompt. And you could do just this enormous amount of data augmentation. And
Right.
I think that could make it actually better. Theoretically, it should converge on actually being as good, or in theory it should be better than anyone alive, because it could theoretically have far more like practice than anyone will live to like experience.
Practice and memory. So even if we know something, we do not recall it while we are working, and
Yes, you
we
can
lose
ask it any
our.
episode. Like if you ask it about a TV show that came out 50 years ago and what happened on 3-01, it has it like cold. It remembers every like major plot point and the character names, and like it spells them correctly.
Okay, so this is a very interesting discussion, and I will be happy to further discuss that. And the points are beautiful. I mean, I really thank you for the points raised. I will show now what I had, I think a month ago with ChatGPT, and this was the previous model, the 3 version, and it is still very good, but not perfect. And I do say that it will become much, much better. I mean, you feel that, you see that. It will be a game changer. And I think that this is exactly what you are also agreeing with, right?
Yeah, that, and the other thing is you could build a bot that automatically answers Stack Overflow questions to farm for reputation.
Currently, by the way, Stack Overflow, at least they add announcements saying you should not post answers from ChatGPT. You may be expelled. Now they do not have this announcement, but they do not encourage that. Anyhow, this is the question: is it legal or undefined behavior in C++ to pass an object or its definition to its own constructor? Do you remember? This is the last thing that we have for a language lawyer, and this is the answer. Passing an object to its own constructor while defining it is not while defining it is not illegal in C++, but it is undefined behavior. That cannot be true. I mean, we just confused ChatGPT, because if something is not illegal, so it should be legal. I mean, there are only 2 cases here: illegal and if it is not illegal, then it is legal. If it is legal, then it is not undefined behavior. So in fact, ChatGPT is saying here 2 opposite things. This is because during construction, the object is not fully constructed. That's true. And its state is indeterminate. That's true. But you can still use the reference or pointer. Attempting to access the object before it is being fully constructed can lead to unexpected results. That's true if you are accessing the values, and can cause the program to behave in unpredictable ways. In general, it is a good idea to avoid such self-reference constructor, etc. Well, no, you can still take the pointer. So the question here got, I mean, this is a complicated question. I have other posts that I wrote about ChatGPT, and the links are here if you want to read more about things that I tried with ChatGPT. And I will be happy to get, like Gerald, from you or anybody else, thoughts about ChatGPT. I'm going to have a talk in C++ now in May about C++ and ChatGPT, or ChatGPT in general, and specifically with C++. So any point that you have in mind and you want to share with me, you have my email, or you can get the email from Kobe later on. So I will be very happy to get additional thoughts and insights.
By the way, I just asked GPT-4 and it did get the right answer.
They get the right answer for this question.
Yes, they gave code that works too.
Okay, that's nice. And it
Yeah,
might
like in an interview, I always want to ask sort of ambiguous questions to find out if a person will tell me they don't know or they'll bullshit me, right? And how much of like your example here is like a kind of a, well, I don't want to, maybe I shouldn't be so, it's an answer that is, incorrect answers are actually more harmful than, like saying I don't know.
Again, ChatGPT doesn't say I don't know. It doesn't have this functionality. No, I'm wrong. It does say I don't know if you ask ChatGPT about things which are not in the model. For example, can you tell me on the web, can you tell me the current weather? It will say I don't have the current weather because I'm trained on historical data, etc.
Right.
So you can say I don't know.
You know what I mean? I kind of want it to tell me, and I haven't used it much, but like it's confidence in its answer. Right, not just I searched my training set. Right, I want to know like if somebody's interviewing, kind of say, well, I don't know, but here's what I think. Right, like that's what I want to know in an interview.
That is interesting to have the the confidence level. Yeah.
So apparently, according to the ChatGPT the GPT-4 paper, you can link it. They show a plot. It does know internally. They have a way to compute from the model itself whether it's confidence. It's just not revealing that to us. And there's a problem that after the reinforcement learning human feedback step, it's lost most of its ability to assess confidence because of essentially human error has been injected. It now bends its confidence in 3 different levels that are very similar to what humans do, where it's either very confident about 50-50 or low confidence, while it was more precisely calibrated before that point. The other interesting thing is that what they did for GPT-4 is they had repeatedly generate answers, then it would evaluate its own answers to see if it was hallucinating something that wasn't real, and then they would reinforcement learn they repeatedly generate and they reinforcement learn on the answers that the model itself believes is less hallucinatory. It sounds bizarre, but the model itself does know that it doesn't know something, and when it reviews its own text, it can find its own mistakes. Like when we use ChatGPT, we're seeing the first pass. If you ask it to look at its own answer, it will use its previous output as the input, and it can actually fix incorrect answers as well. It's bizarre to think of it that way, but it has to do with the way it's a greedy algorithm. And on the second pass, it has the result of the first run of the algorithm. And so it's not as greedy because it has the complete generation available to it as a data input.
Yeah, that is very interesting. And I did try some cases where it adds some answer, and then I asked it to, recheck the answer, and I got, oh, I'm sorry that, and in some cases, it's either because I'm asking, are you sure? Or because, as you say, it uses this additional information in a second pass.
Yeah, so what they did during GPT-4 was they did that a few million times and had it fix itself rather than us having to go and correct it a million times.
Right, right. And it is interesting. So back to the question of, would you prefer an answer which is wrong but safe? Well, I would prefer an answer that says the last thing. In general, it is not a good idea. That's okay. I'm fine with that, as long as the beginning is correct. I don't want incorrect answers, because incorrect answers at the end, can lead me to change code which is valid. If it is a valid code, I don't want to change it just because somebody says no, it is invalid. And it is okay if it says, but it is not encouraged, but it is not good. That's fine. We are almost out of time. Let's conclude. Let's summarize. I did still more than the 10 minutes that I promised. Let's summarize. So improving your C+ level, I mean, becoming your own ChatGPT requires you to go over materials, read QA in Stack Overflow. Otherwise, ChatGPT will be smarter than you. He will be smarter than you anyhow. But you do want to be able, I mean, to read ChatGPT answers and to catch him on his own mistakes, on her own mistakes, ask questions and answer questions, because answering questions let you explore, let you learn new things that maybe you thought you know. In many cases, I think that I know something, but only after drilling it down, exploring, I see that, okay, I knew, but not all the picture, not all the thing. A bonus question here, what really happens when you don't free after malloc before program termination? Sounds like, well, the program will terminate and then the operating system will just free all the memory being held by the process. Yes, in a way. Is it good? Is it bad? There is a nice discussion here. Maybe I'm in a embedded environment or real-time environment without operating system or without memory management. Anyhow, this is a nice question. Also for language lawyers, we will not go through that. And this is the last slide. And I'm still here for questions if you want to discuss anything or raise something or go back to any of the slides.
Thank you so much for that. It was very interesting. I personally want to get the slides and go over the questions and make sure I understand. So thanks a bunch.
Thank you all. And I really liked, and I thank you, those who were in the discussion about the discussion on ChatGPT. And I would like to get, you have the email here, so we'll get that in the slides. Any thought, any insight, even insights that you were just discussed, if you want to elaborate, because as I told you, I'm working now on better understanding ChatGPT and how it would assist us as programmers, and I'm going to talk about that in C++ now. So thank you all.
Thanks a bunch. Thank you. Thanks everyone. I'll see you next time. Here, bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.